Hi, my name is Yawande Austin, and it's an honor to be here at the Africana Film Festival 2020, interviewing the creatives behind Funeral of a Nation, Keith Nixon Jr., the film director, and Harold Lilly, music producer extraordinaire. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Virginia is widely recognized as the birthplace of slavery in America. So, in universal order, I think it's no accident that Richmond has become a focal point of not only the global pandemic, but also a convergence of another pandemic, and that is the fight against systemic racism and police brutality. How do you feel about Richmond's response to this double pandemic, considering that both of you all are from this very land?
I think there's so much conversation about surrounding the terminology that's being used to label what's happening here in Richmond and across the nation for that matter. On one hand, you hear protests, on the other, you hear riots, you hear civil unrest. But I think regardless of how you label it, I think it's born out of out of frustration, out of stress. There's been this kind of convergence of unforeseen circumstances, and it's played out in a way that is unprecedented. And I think it's no mistake that it's happening here in Richmond as well. 1 in 4 African Americans can trace their lineage to slaves brought through Richmond. And so I think it's kind of been this full circle moment that we're having here in Richmond. And I think it's warranted on some level. Granted, everyone has an opinion on how it should be approached, but regardless of the method, I think the meaning is again warranted. I think it's necessary that people do what it is they feel they need to do to express their frustration during a period like this.
Yeah. Now, you all are both from different parts of the Richmond area, but there's no doubt in my mind through the short time we've gotten to know each other that growing up in Richmond, Petersburg, and the surrounding cities has had a great influence on who you are as creatives. Harold, how has Richmond inspired your musical work?
Richmond has inspired my musical work. It's one of the blackest places on the planet. To me, one of the most beautiful places on the planet. And it's inspired my work. I think just like any black city in America or across the world, the village raises you. And a friend of mine said the other day, lions raise lions, or the jungle will raise a lion. And Richmond is a beautiful jungle, and so it's raised a lion here. And I wouldn't be in this position that I'm in if not for the city and the history of the city.
Yes.
So there it is.
Keith, would you mind answering the same question? How has the Virginia experience impacted how you see not only Virginia at this critical time in our history, but how you see the world?
Virginia is in this kind of weird midsection, right? Where we're not far enough south to be considered the South. We're not far enough north to be considered the North. And I think out of that, a very unique culture has been born. You have geniuses like Harold that have come out of this landscape. And for me, I've kind of taken that, I guess you could say that that duality, right, between the North and the South, particularly here in Central Virginia. That's kind of influenced my work in a number of ways. But just having that that culture and that heritage that we associate with Virginia, particularly Southern Virginia, Central Southern Virginia, and its ties to Black culture through slavery. It's been it's had a tremendous impact on my work.
That's right. Now, let's talk about the film, Funeral of a Nation. I have to tell you all, the first 30 seconds of the film, I was breathless. It was stunning to me to see this intentional interplay between music and film done in a way that I had never seen before. How did you all come together? How did you decide we're strategically going to create a musical essay about how we see what's happening right now in history? Very often we see films and documentaries done about history such a long time in retrospect, but we are right now in the middle of an historic moment that I still can't believe is happening, but you all are capturing it in real time. How did this partnership come together?
Keith, you can go first.
I'll say working with Harold has probably been one of the most organic experiences, collaborative experiences I've had. I think, when so much of this came out of conversation, the piece itself, we wanted it to be conversational. We probably wouldn't have been able to do this if we didn't understand each other on a very personal level. So that being said, I think you hit the nail on the head when you have this juxtaposition between what happened in the past and what you're seeing visually, what's been said, and what's happening currently. I think it goes again to that duality, right? That we talk about where Virginians are concerned, where we're in this middle space. And I think that's where we are as a society. We're in this middle section between past, present, future. And so we wanted to capture that. We wanted to, express that visually, and Harold did a brilliant job of expressing that audibly. So I think, going in, we knew musical essay would be the construct, but we didn't know exactly how it will manifest itself. And so we really just started, and I'll let Harold speak to the music, but I know some of it has been just kind of, in him for years and years, just looking for a way to manifest itself. And so then for me, visually, I just had these images and just these thoughts, and I just pulled them together. I sent him a bunch of stuff, and actually that first 30 seconds, first minute or so of the Lord's Prayer was the first thing I sent him. I sent him that with some of the photos that we used, the album cover, things of that nature. And from there, we just kept expanding and kept growing. And so that's how we ended up with what Harold is dubbing a musical essay.
Yeah, it really is a powerful production, if I can refer to it as that way. And this film shows the undeniable intersection between music and social movements, as music has historically done in the past. We know that the American Civil Rights Movement was also fought through music, through protest songs. The fight against apartheid in South Africa has historically been known as the war that was won through 4-part harmony. We have this indelible connection to music and protest, but yet the music industry and film industry, I would dare say, has fallen silent in the middle of what researchers are now recognizing as the single biggest movement in our history. Do you have a sense of why the industry has fallen silent, and why did you choose to give voice to the protests that we're witnessing still?
Yeah, I think the first part, I think the industry is going silent on that because those films and those works to them probably stop being entertaining because it's money. They still want to make money, and so the truth, if it's harsh, and if it's painful, It's hard to make entertaining.
Mm.
And so I think that's why they going mute on it. And what Keith and I wanted to do was we wanted to tell that same truth, express that same um, grief, but also add some imagination and storytelling, which Keith is so wonderful at. With how do we make this thing entertaining, and how do we create something that's never been done before?
Yes.
With all this history happening around us, we might as well join on in and make something that's never been made.
Yeah.
And that's how we got here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was stated in your film that about funerals specifically, the fact that the older the tradition, the deeper the impact, and I'm paraphrasing this,
Yes.
the
Yes.
deeper
You're
the
right.
impact and the bigger the reflection. I mean,
Yes.
that hit me like a ton of bricks. Like
Yes.
America is truly going through its own death right now. We are witnessing
Yes.
the death of the America that existed before May 25th, 2020, when George Floyd laid on the ground in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with a knee on his neck from 3 police officers that still have not been held accountable. And you know, as I reckon with myself that the life we knew before is dead, I'm also
Yeah.
hopeful about the newness of what awaits us in this new world, where, as you so poignantly reference the music industry, that wait a minute, we've been responsible for putting a lot of garbage, pumping a lot of garbage into the minds of so many of the people that have been systematically hunted by the police, perhaps to numb us. What do you think awaits us from the other side of this funeral? Because I don't know about you, I believe in reincarnation. I think there's another life to be lived after the death of America. What awaits us on the other side?
I'll let you get that one, Keith.
Keith?
It's interesting you say that because you know, Harold and I talked so much. We talked about how so much of this was born out of grief, right? And how, for me on a personal level, I lost my mother in December, and so this was cathartic for me, and it was therapeutic in a lot of ways, in ways I didn't consciously recognize initially. And so then we're also dealing with this now collective grief, right, as a nation, where I was, you know, editing the video for all my friends, and the footage of Ahmaud Arbery broke, you know. We were putting the finishing touches on it when when that footage broke. And so, you know, while I say so much of this came out of grief, we had no way of knowing in doing this. We did this, you know, before some of these, and granted, this has been an ongoing thing, right? Where we've been essentially target practice, right? Black bodies. But I say that to say, even in the midst of this project, there were, you know, there was more being exposed. And so it came out of that. But I think what we really wanted to express was there is still hope, right? There's still, because we know, particularly in the Black community, we recognize funerals as celebration, right? A celebration of life, right? And so with that being said, to answer your question, I think, you know, none of us know obviously what's on the other side.
What do you hope that we learn from the death of this nation today in 2020?
I think what I hope we learn is we have a collective responsibility. We have personal and collective responsibility to do our part to uplift and elevate those that come after us, right? Because the mark that we leave here, you know, someone has to deal with it, correct? And so I think with the death of this nation, and whether people want to take that literally, figuratively, metaphorically, whatever, I think really what it is it's a challenge to build a new nation that is aware, conscious, responsible, where there's equity, where there's, where we're responsible and cognizant of how we treat others and, the mark that we leave. So that's my hope. My hope is that, whether it's on this side or the next, that people will be able to live their truth and to be themselves in full and in a way that doesn't negatively impact those around them or doesn't have to, step on someone else to get to where they need to be.
Yeah. So in these unprecedented times, I certainly haven't missed many parallels that exist between the COVID-19 virus and racism. And in the film, you pointed out the fact that funerals have become normalized, the way we grieve the loss of our loved ones today, the distance that has been created between us and our loved ones who are ill and then die by themselves. And to a great degree, I can't help but notice that racism has been normalized for a long time. What's different about the fight now that you so beautifully captured in this film? How is it for the first time in history that 60 countries around the world and every state in America has now said no more? What's different this time?
I think what's different this time is the cell phone, the mobile device, the technology. This has been happening for a long time.
Right.
Now there's a camera in every hand that's walking around that has a mobile device.
Yeah.
So the news can't be as controlled as it. The news is everybody. I call Instagram and social media. Everybody got their own television show.
Right. Right.
And so that's what's different. And I think as humans, when you see this stuff, just scrolling, you could be looking for sports. You could be looking for beauty. You could be looking for anything. And then on your timeline, you just go, whoa, 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 what happened? What happened in Minneapolis? What happened in Texas? What happened in Virginia? What happened in Wisconsin?
Yeah.
And it just starts to become, this isn't just history books.
Yeah.
Or this isn't my black friend just complaining. Or, you know what I mean?
Right.
This has been happening. And I think technology is the reason why it's front and center now. And as it keeps happening, it's just gonna keep getting more front and center and more front and center. So I think that we as artists had a responsibility to speak on it in a very, very, very special way.
It was very special indeed. Keith, do you want to add to that? What's different about the fight against racism right now that you captured in this film?
I think, my great grandfather, he's 97, and I remember him saying one time before that there was a period, and I'm speaking specifically to the Black community first before I address it at large. He said there was a period when he was growing up where the preacher was always considered the most intelligent individual in the community, right? They were the ones that, because of divine relation, that they can go to God, and they were called, they were anointed, they were considered to be the most knowledgeable person, right? I think what's happened now is we don't have to look to certain figures to be the most knowledgeable, and we all have the information for ourselves. If there's something that we need to understand, we can go and find it. If there's something, and granted, there's some, there's misinformation, there's divisiveness, whatever the case may be. But I think what has happened is people people, it's not word of mouth anymore. To Harold's point, you can just scroll and see it. You don't have to guess what happened. Granted, there may be some, there are often circumstances surrounding things that we're not always privy to, but the violence is very apparent. And you don't have to guess what happened, right? If you see a man who was under someone's knee for 8 minutes, you don't have to wait to hear that from the next person. It doesn't have to travel from time. You have it at your fingertips. So that being said, I think we've all kind of had a collective, awakening, right? Where now we don't have to. We've seen the imagery of, say, Emmett Till, who had an open casket funeral, but it felt so removed from us. Although, if Emmett Till were still here, he would be in his 70s. So in a sense, we felt like it was, so long ago. But now we realize that it's still current, it's still happening, and we can all see it. It's at our fingertips. And so that again, that frustration, that stress has extended beyond us, and now other people can see it, whether it be, Switzerland or, whatever, wherever across the globe. Now people can very visibly see for themselves what has transpired here for years and continues to transpire here.
Yeah. So I don't know if you all have thought about this, but 100 years from now, when nobody on this call is here anymore, I do believe that some of the great films that we've witnessed in the past couple of years that celebrate our history, Hidden Figures, Black Panther, and now Funeral of a Nation, will not only be seen, but celebrated by a future generation. Yeah. When little children one day look at your film and they look at this critical moment in our history, what do you want them to say?
For me, and I'm glad you asked that, because I made this for my kids because it was important, because they know what their daddy do, but they don't necessarily know what their daddy believe. Now, I can tell them, but I would much rather show them, right? And so I want kids from now and future generations to look at it and go, oh man, who is all these black people in here? Who is that? Who is this? So this is how they did funerals. So you would actually, what? Who is Aretha Franklin? Who is who is that? Who is that? Who is Muhammad Ali? He was a boxer. Why is he talking about him with such reverence? Who is Nipsey Hussle? Why is he here? What? You know what I mean? I want them to ask. I want them to ask questions. I want them to see a mirror.
Yes.
Of how magical and beautiful they are. Simply because they look like the people on the screen.
Yes.
That's my wish.
I think that you achieved that. I can't think of any more powerful reason that we love and are so deeply connected to music and film, right? That's to inspire, to spark curiosity and inspire one to action. So I think you accomplished that. Keith, when this film is seen 100 years from now, what do you hope that little children will say when they look at this moment that you've captured in history?
I hadn't thought about that initially, and when you just asked, it just kind of hit me. And to be mentioned in the conversation with, say, Hidden Figures or Black Panther, these are very I don't think I'm necessarily I've done something that's on that level, but when you put it that way, I think what I understand is the reason that A Hidden Figures or Black Panther, particularly Black Panther. I think what was so important about that was representation, right? And, you know, I've been telling people whenever we discuss Funeral of a Nation that I really wanted it to span the spectrum of Blackness, right? I think in a lot of ways, we're reduced to certain ideals of what Blackness is, what it looks like, what it feels like, what it should be, what it's not, you know. But I think what I've come to understand is there's not an easy way to define Blackness, right? And we, in so many ways, we set the standard, right, for most cultures in America, right? We're the tastemakers, correct? And so with that being said, what I wanted to do was to include imagery that so many are not privy to, that show us in positive light, that show us in, you know, in our glory and grace, and, you know, show us unified and show us as a collective. And what I really want is, I want that to evoke pride. You know, I want kids 100 years from now to see that and say, "Hey, we're pretty cool, right? And we're strong and we're resilient." And you know, if not for us, what would America be, right? So that's really what I really want people to recognize. Hey, you know, we were in the military and there were many wars that were won because of us, right? Or hey, you know, we set the standard for this and we established that. And you know, you can go down the list of what we've done, what we've accomplished. It's not always recognized, it's not always known, it's not always celebrated, appreciated. But you know, if I can kind of help to bring that to light for someone, then I think, you know, our job is accomplished.
That's right.
And I truly believe that you captured that. I recognize the transition. You captured almost 400 years, not of just oppression, which is a lot of people focus on, but of celebration, of resilience, of the joy of Black children, the joy of a Black man and woman, even in the midst of what many would hail as our darkest hour. And we see that today in the Black Lives Matter movement as well. Well, we're coming to the end. What's next for both of you? This is your first collaboration. I'm hoping it's not the last. Do we have enough in the works, or what we got going on? What are you willing to share with the Afrikana family about what's next for Keith and Harold?
Well, we're going to basically do an anthology of musical essays.
All right.
And we already have the next 3 to 4 laid out.
I love it.
To go, because one day people won't even know what they're looking at until probably maybe 2 years, 3 years from now.
Sure.
You know, so we definitely have a vision of how we want these things to be received. Like you said, long after we're gone. So the next essay is going to be, ooh boy, the next essay is going to be crazy.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah. So
we don't want you to give it all away, but being a musician myself, I'm all excited, and I just want to put like first dibs in there. If you need a mezzo soprano,
I got you.
I do have quite a range. So
I got you.
This little light of mine, oh, whatever you need, or the high E's.
I'm gonna call you one day. I'm gonna call you one day.
All right, that's amazing. I love that. Final thoughts. What is the most important? And I have to stress most important, because there were so many important messages that you all conveyed in this musical essay. I could go on and on about it. What's the most important message that you want to leave viewers with when they walk away from this film? What do you hope that they learn about themselves, about where we stand in history, about perhaps a bigger part that they can play in affecting change?
Well, you know what? It's a scripture actually. For me, sorrow is better than laughter. For
Mm,
by the uh, for by the sadness of countenance, the heart is made better. A lot of times, we want to laugh. We laugh. They say laughter is medicine for the soul, right?
right.
But sorrow is better for the heart.
Mm,
And
mm,
and so it's a heart, and we got a heart issue. And
mm,
so funerals have a way of making people deal with their heart.
mm.
You don't even have to know the person who passed away. If you in the funeral, you asking
Yes.
your heart is being made better from the questions that are being asked. A funeral is one of the most precious rituals that can happen. There's a lot of them,
Yes.
but in
Mm,
the Black community, I've seen some of the most amazing things happen in Black funerals. So,
mm.
and I've asked myself the most amazing questions at Black funerals. So, for me, it would be that scripture.
Thank you,
That's what I
Keith.
want.
Okay.
Um, I really want, um, I think going back to, we talk about the spectrum of blackness, right?
Yes.
I think for me, what I really want people to take away is, you know, not to be cliche, but I think it's a powerful statement. Black is beautiful, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I think, you know, you touched on it earlier. I think so often we're defined by our oppression. We're
Yes.
defined by the struggle. Um, we're defined by violence against us.
Mm,
But I think what people fail to realize is, despite that, we're still here. We're thriving, and
mm,
because we're resilient. We're we're creative. We're brilliant. And so I
Yeah.
really want people to take away from this that um, without blackness, America in its current iteration, if you could
yeah.
say, would cease to exist, right? Because
Yeah.
we're woven through the very fabric. It was built on our backs, right?
Mm,
Um, and you know, I really just want people to know that we don't have to be defined by struggle or oppression. There's so much more to us than that, and
Mhm.
I encourage people to dig deep and figure out how they want to be defined,
Mhm.
how they want their blackness defined. And
mm,
Amen.
if Funeral of a Nation is the impetus for that,
mm.
so be it. But whether it's me and Harold, or whoever it may be, whether it's Ryan Coogler and Chadwick Boseman and Black Panther, or whether it's Spike Lee or James Baldwin or Beyonce, whoever, dig into that and figure out what it is that resonates with you and why,
Mm.
and understand that this is blackness at its best, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Wow. Well, this has been an honor and a pleasure. Thanks so much again, Keith Nixon
thank you.
Jr. and Harold Lilly, the creative genius behind Funeral of a Nation. You all have an open invitation anytime you are in Petersburg for some good gumbo.
Hey.
I'm gonna take you up on that.
Hey, I don't play. Angelina, and I will leave room for y'all to lay down somewhere and come back for seconds and thirds. Yes, it's
Oh,
like that.
that sounds
Thank
like
you.
my type of party.
Yeah, I call on all the ancestors when I cook. So seriously, this has been just a beautiful opportunity to have a heart-to-heart discussion with fellow creatives and historians who are capturing such an unprecedented and important moment in our history. It has been an honor, and I look forward to following your future endeavors.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.